now they're coming clean now, and because they have to. They're having to tell the truth now. And it turns out that some of these people and the sightings they saw were right all along.
That's interesting. I mean, why do you think they have to, come clean now?
I don't think they did have to, and I don't think the government should ever lie. The situation in Britain now is that politics is a dirty word. Nobody goes to vote in Britain because it's like you have one politician or another one, and you hear people saying, well, what do you want, heart disease or cancer? I don't want either one of them.
Yeah.
In America, there is a guy called Ron Paul.
Yep.
And Ron Paul, he is the no-sleaze candidate, and the people are going mad for him. People are going mad for him. If you look at people like Hillary Clinton, they have big money behind them. Now, people don't invest big money unless there's something in it for them.
That's
and when
right.
you buy your candidate, you dictate their policies.
I mean, just look at to pick up on the Ron Paul thing there. I mean, exactly, I totally agree. There's so many people that seem to be supporting him. At least that's the feel you get of it from the internet, if you're monitoring that, so to speak. But just look at the vote, the vote that is going on over there, and it seems to be fraud on for those who are into this and looking at this, they're counting the ballots and the recounts and stuff like this.
We've had it over here, but I mean, there's so much in the way of sort of voter fraud that is done.
Yeah.
There's a site that I write a lot of conspiracy stuff for, and that's called the Truth Seekers site. Very good site, Truth Seekers Co.uk. Very, very good. And I also put some paranormal stuff on various sites, but Seekers of Spirit Co.uk. I put a lot of sort of paranormal and sort of spiritual stuff on there.
Right at the beginning, you mentioned that you were at a meeting in a Freemasonic environment, so to speak.
Yeah.
Are you a Freemason yourself?
I used to have very close dealings with the very, very top Freemasons. Now, some of these are wonderful men who did a lot of charity work and who had the welfare of their fellow men at heart. But wherever you get a group of men, there'll always be someone who will lead. And I'm very suspicious of. I'll just give you one instance here. When Harold Wilson was Prime Minister, there was a flap because his shoe repairman found a bug in the heel of his brogues. Okay. Now they didn't know whether this was a Soviet bug or whether they didn't know who it was. But Wilson, he was, let me say, he was very Soviet friendly. You see.
Mm-hmm.
So what then happened was there was a meeting, and I can vouch for this because I know people who were at that meeting, between the Freemasons in the army, in the police, and for all the major services. They all met and they discussed. The words were put to me, and I'll tell you the exact words that were put to me. This guy said, we held a contingency meeting. He said, and we made plans. He said, if we had to take over from Britain, he said, and we were going to ask Lord Mountbatten, he said, to be the figurehead. He said, now, Lord Mountbatten is a guy who has very close connections to Rothschilds.
Okay, yeah.
And Rothschilds financed both sides during World War II.
Yeah.
The Rothschild syndicates. You can research them on the net, and you can sort of see about the Rothschilds.
Exactly, yeah. There has been written a lot about that, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was kind of one idea when you talk so much about World War II, that we have this idea that there are people up on the top that are financially gaining from this, and because of political interests in
That's what it's all about. There was a very good friend of mine died 2 years ago, Rabbi Dr. Louis Jacobs. Now, during the Cold War, I had a bit to do with Louis Jacobs, and he was a very fair-minded man. He was a very moderate rabbi, and he told us a lot of very interesting stuff about funding and about usury. But what you have to remember is that we're told Britain won World War II.
Mm-hmm.
We were paying back the international banks till the end of 2006, the interest and so on, So you have to sort of say, well, there's no sign that Britain has won.
Well, exactly. Who has won?
You can't say someone has won
No.
when they are financially crippled.
Exactly. Especially when so many people too are lost in a war. I mean, both World War One and World War Two, Britain lost a lot of young men, basically.
Yeah. Well, we all did, but I mean, there's this idea that we won the war, but Britain came out bombed, blitzed, and bankrupt. So, I mean, I don't think we won at all. I think the bankers won. I think international bankers won because they bankrolled both sides.
Exactly. Sheesh, oh my God. And then of course you have the agenda of if we are talking about for instance Gordon Brown. Now his recent what he has been talking about on the economic forum meeting down in Davos. He's talking very much about the globalization of the world, not only economically but also through Europe and so forth. And that is one agenda that is kind of running alongside the economic one. Also, of course, that they don't want the nations to be left anymore. They want to have a global society now, right?
Well, they do. They do want to have a society. If you look, the idea is for one world government, one police force, one religion, one political ideal, and it's unhealthy. And in Britain, they're trying to bring in ID cards. There's a lot of public resistance to this. But, the ID cards is just another means of control.
Exactly.
And it amused me because one of the reasons they said we went into Iraq was to bring democracy to them. Well, all the time they're eroding democracy in Britain and in America too.
Yeah.
They're stealing our democracy by the day. Do you know, when Tony Blair was in power over that 10 years, his wife was a lawyer, and her company, Matrix Chambers, brought in one law change almost every day.
Really?
So they are stealing our rights as people. They're eroding our freedoms, and yet we went into Iraq to give them democracy? I don't think so. Do you, Hendrik?
No, I don't think so. It's a totally different agenda, and what that might be is also in itself actually very, very interesting. And by the way, I just wanted to mention, Cherie Blair. I've heard stories that she herself actually is very involved in what some people at least would call kind of occult subject. Have you researched?
She is actually, yes. I can tell you that firsthand. She is actually, and Tony as well. Tony has experimented. Tony is a man, he's not mentally very stable. And Cherie has advisors who are questionable in terms of their abilities and their motives. But certainly Cherie is very into the supernatural, yes, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, hey, listen, let's kind of talk or begin to focus a little bit about the content that was in your article called New World Order Astrologers.
Okay.
Basically, I would like to begin, I guess, to talk a little bit about, the occult and the use, I guess, also of astrology in regards to World War II. I mean, what seems to be kind of difficult is to kind of map out, so to speak, how widespread this was.
It was very widespread. Well, let me tell you that the leading churchman in the Church of England into the occult and the supernatural was a guy called Archbishop Lang. Now, he was very knowledgeable, and he held quite a lengthy investigation into spiritualism. Unfortunately, the outbreak of the war meant that it was never published, but I have Canon Glendinning's own copy, and it was very favourable. And I've had quite a close connection with spiritualism over the years, and sure, you get a lot of frauds and fakes, but there's a lot of sort of genuine comfort that can be given from it. And remember that both the hospice movement and thanatological counselling, after-death counselling, owe their inspiration to sort of spiritualists, But also, one of Churchill's main advisors was a guy called Lord Downing, and he was a spiritualist, and he was very knowledgeable on the supernatural as well. But certainly Churchill was steeped in it, yes. Churchill had advisors, people like Dennis Wheatley, who wrote several books, very interesting books. They're a little dated now, but they're very, very good books on the occult and World War II. That was Dennis Wheatley. And also, there is a small mention in the MI6 files of the wickedest man in the world, Aleister Crowley,
Sure.
and his connection with Churchill.
Because a lot of people said that Crowley went over to the other side. I mean, he was a spy for a while. He was in Germany and was writing for a newspaper, I think, over there. Have you been able to kind of sort out on which side he was at the end?
I haven't really looked into Crowley, only as a side issue.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that have looked very much into Crowley. I only know that he did experiments on the most haunted place in Britain, which is the Cliff Edge. The name escapes me at the moment, but I did an article on it for one of the magazines recently.
Okay, you're not talking about the Burlesque house or something like that?
No,
Okay.
no. It's the highest cliff in Britain, and a lot of people commit suicide off there.
Okay.
But there was a piece there called the Devil's Chimney.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Aleister Crowley did some very sinister experiments during World War II there.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
But there's a lot of people that claim that Crowley was involved with extraterrestrials.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, exactly. I mean, we have this classic depiction of what Crowley called LAM or LAM, and many people have kind of tied this back to the original image of what we know today commonly, or consensus as the gray alien. Basically, have you seen a picture of this?
Yeah.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, who knows? There might be something there. I don't know. I'm not sure, but so I mean, let's talk a little bit about the guy that you write about primarily in your article, a guy called Louis Duval. Tell us a little about him, if you will.
Okay, well, what you have to understand is the climate in which he appeared. The ground has to be fertile for the flower to appear. Churchill was encouraging people with occult abilities, and he made, or his group, sometimes called the Black Group or the Black Team, they made overtures to several of the most famous occultists of the day. A lot of them refused, but some of them didn't. And there were people who got involved with this. Now, the General Stubblebine, the American general who used supernatural means in the Cold War, he took a lot of his inspiration, and a lot of his paperwork came from Churchill's Black Team.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of General Stubblebine?
I have not. Tell us about him.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. He wrote a book called Men Who Stare at Goats.
Aha,
what
okay.
It was certain mental exercises,
sure,
whereby these men would try and kill goats by telepathy and mental willpower. And that was part of their sort of exercises. But I had documented people in the Soviet Union who had their abilities amplified, and they would practice day by day. And sometimes there'd be a team of people, and it's called a battery of wills. Just like if you connect a battery to another battery to another battery, you enhance the power.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a room full of people all willing for something to happen, and some of these guys in the Soviet bloc, they achieved. Wolf Messing was a classic example. He trained a lot of people there during the Cold War to affect change in Western leaders and in Western policy.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I think you had a guy over there in the UK, I think he's called John Ronson, that actually did a documentary called The Men Who Stare at Goats. Did you ever see that one?
I didn't, but I'm familiar with The Men Who Stare at Goats, and a lot of the information surrounding it. But
so, what do you make of stuff like that? Do you personally think that is for real, or is it all a fraud?
Yes, it is. I've seen stuff done in colleges and universities, and provided you know what you're doing, and incidentally, the book by General Stubblebine, it deliberately doesn't tell you how to do it, which I was pleased to see. But there are, and you can achieve an awful lot. There is a very good book called Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain by Lynn and somebody Ostrander. That's a very good book. The Soviets were furious with that because that broke a lot of their defense psychic initiatives.
Really?
Oh yes, yeah.
Huh.